So my name is Robert Hayes. I'm the Community Outreach Librarian and Head of Technical Services at the Tewksbury Public Library. The library, along with the Tewksbury Beautification Committee, is proud to sponsor tonight's event. Really looking forward to it. Just a couple of logistical things. Everyone who registered for tonight's program will receive an email from me tomorrow morning with a link to a feedback survey. Would love for you to fill that out and let us know what you thought of today's event and what you'd like to see for future events. In addition, in that email will be information about the town-wide cleanup day that is coming up on May 8th. The Beautification Committee provided me with some information, which I will include in that email. Secondly, just wanted to let you know that Neil is recording tonight's program, so just be aware that Neil is recording. I imagine the recording is only going to capture the people who talk, so if you don't talk, I don't think your image will be captured by the camera, so to speak. But we are going to record this and provide this to Tewksbury Telemedia and upload it to the town's YouTube page. And then I think the game plan for tonight, which Neil can touch on a little bit, is Neil's going to present for about 45 minutes, and then we'll take roughly 15 minutes or so of questions. And I think the preference is people ask their questions via the chat, but I think at the very, very end, we may also allow for some video and audio questions. And, obviously Neil is a part of a statewide organization. He works with a lot of municipalities. He certainly knows his stuff when it comes to trash and recycling. But I did just want to note, if there's something super Tewksbury specific that Neil does not know, then we're encouraging people to reach out to the town manager's office, specifically his administrative assistants, Janine Tamboli and Christine, Christine, how do I pronounce that last name? Well, Janine and Christine, and I will provide their email addresses in the email tomorrow morning as well. Neil brushed up on his Tewksbury recycling and trash regulations, but I'm sure there are some things that he may not know. So Janine and Christine will certainly be able to fill in any gaps. All right, so let me, without any further ado, hopefully everyone who plans on being here is now here since we're 3 minutes past. So let me introduce Neil. So are you confused about what goes in your trash bin and what goes in your recycling bin? You're not alone. Tonight we're joined by Keep Massachusetts Beautiful. They're presenting their program entitled Talking Trash, Talking Trash and Recycling. We're gonna learn what really happens to trash and recyclables here in Massachusetts. You'll learn ways to reduce the amount of trash you generate, improve your recycling habits, and make small changes to lead to a more sustainable lifestyle. You'll also get an overview of MassDEP's innovative RecycleSmartMA education program. And as I mentioned, please bring your questions as there'll be time for Q&A at the end of this interactive program. And this program is led by Neil Rhein, who's the founder and executive director of Keep Massachusetts Beautiful. So all 41 of us watching live here on Zoom, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Neil for doing this for us tonight. And Neil, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you for that great introduction, Robert. Appreciate it. My name is Neil Rhein, as Robert indicated, and tonight we are going to talk trash. So literally, we're going to talk about what goes in your recycling bin, what goes in your trash bin. I mean, it's not something most people spend a lot of time thinking about, but hopefully after tonight, you will. And one thing I want to point out, we have a large audience, and this presentation is geared kind of towards a mid-level of knowledge as far as recycling and trash issues. And I'm going to start talking at kind of a global level, and I'm going to bring it down to the Massachusetts level. And then we'll talk more locally about Tewksbury and what we can all do in our personal lives on these issues. So with that introduction, I'm going to get started and share my screen. So bear with me. This is always the trickiest part of the whole operation. Slideshow from beginning. All right, there it is. All right, so again, thanks for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. And let's get right into it. So this image here really kind of epitomizes the problem we have globally with consumer packaging. So here we have an item that comes with its own packaging, the banana peel, And but for some reason, we feel compelled to wrap it in cellophane and styrofoam and put it on the shelf in a supermarket. And in this case, put an organic sticker on it just to add insult to injury. And we see this everywhere we go. Within the supermarkets, virtually all produce now is somehow packaged in plastic. Cucumbers are wrapped in plastic. A lot of it unnecessary, but still happening. And then after you make your purchases, they often want to put it in a plastic bag. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, we're just literally drowning in a sea of plastic around the world. And unfortunately, we see images like this on beaches in other parts of the world. Thankfully, we don't see this here in Massachusetts, although we do get trash washing up on our beaches, but thankfully not to this degree. And like I said earlier, you probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about what happens after you throw something away. But this issue of plastic pollution in particular is something we all need to be concerned about, because whatever trash we're generating here on Earth stays here on Earth. And this reliance on plastic packaging is really overwhelming the planet, especially parts of the world where they don't have the infrastructure to deal with basic waste hauling and waste removal. And right now, it's estimated that a garbage truck's worth full of plastic is entering our oceans every minute of every day, and that by 2050 we'll have more plastic than fish in our oceans when measured by weight, if we continue in the direction we're going right now. And some people will like to point fingers and say, well, it's all, it's not our fault here in the US, it's the Southeast Asian countries, developing countries, and there is some truth to that. I saw a video recently from India of garbage trucks literally backing up to a river and just dumping straight into the river. I mean, pretty appalling. But you also have to keep in mind that here in the US, we're about 4% of the world's population, and we generate about 17% of the plastic waste worldwide. So, and we're often, until just a few years ago, we were all shipping it overseas and just kind of out of sight, out of mind kind of mentality. Before I go to the next slide, I'm going to ask you a little question here. Make this a little interactive for you. So take a minute and try to answer this question. So every year, the Ocean Conservancy does the International Coastal Cleanup, and they are very meticulous about counting what they collect. And the last time I did it was 2019. It didn't happen last year, unfortunately. But what do you think was the #1 thing that they found worldwide? So remember, this is not just the US, this is across the globe. I'll give you another 10 seconds here to take your best guess. All right, give you another 5. All right, I'm gonna shut it down here and just share the results with you. So let's see what we have. According to your best guesses, it's #1 is plastic beverage bottles, and then there was a tie between plastic bags and cigarette butts, and no one guessed the correct answer, believe it or not, which was food wrappers. So I was a little surprised by that myself, because normally year after year, the #1 answer is cigarette butts, or has been. But for whatever reason, in 2019, it was food wrappers. But the larger point here being that these are all big problems here in the US and around the world. Maybe the food wrappers are less of an issue here in Massachusetts. And you also have to keep in mind that the impact of all this on wildlife. So we have sea animals, marine mammals washing up dead on shores around the world, and when they open them up to see what was the cause of death, what they often find is that their stomachs are full of plastic. In this particular case, 80 plastic bags. So, and then it also extends to seabirds, where this is off of Midway Island, which is 1,300 miles away from the nearest human beings in Hawaii. But there are still small pieces of plastic out there in the ocean and on the beaches, and these birds will ingest it. It makes them feel full, and they stop eating, and eventually they starve to death. And then we've got this this video went viral a couple of years ago of the poor sea turtle with a straw up its nostril. So plenty of examples of impact on wildlife, including fish. And here's a particularly alarming thing to me. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is essentially a highly concentrated area of trash in the Pacific Ocean. Bigger than, it's huge. It's like bigger than Texas. And you might envision like a floating island or something like that, but it's really more like a minestrone soup made up primarily of microplastics. So, a plastic water bottle ends up in the ocean. Eventually it's breaking down into the little pieces that you see pictured here. And the fish are eating these small bits of plastic, and we're eating fish. In addition to that, they did I saw a study on sea salts from around the world, and I think it was something like over 90% of the samples that they tested had traces of plastic in it. So this is all very alarming. And I should mention, when it comes to these garbage patches, it's not just the Pacific Ocean. Really, every ocean has a highly concentrated area of trash. And then just the overall reminder that, there is no place called away. We like to say, oh, just throw it away. Well, it's going to go somewhere. And sadly, in certain parts of the world, this is how people are living, which is just tragic in my view. So looking at the bigger picture of plastic and, where are we headed? Unfortunately, this analysis is from 2015, but the yellow portion shows where worldwide plastic production is forecast to go, which is only more of it. So how are we going to deal with this volume of plastic? Right now, only about 9% of the world's plastic gets recycled. The rest is ending up in landfills, it's incinerated, or it ends up as litter and microplastics in our oceans. And while I'm going to talk a lot about recycling tonight, I just want to make it clear that, I'm under no illusion that recycling alone is going to solve this problem. It's part of the puzzle. It's an important part of the puzzle, but it's not the only part of the puzzle. All right, so moving on now to, Massachusetts. What do we do with our trash here, right? So let's talk about that. And I'm going to ask you another poll question, test your knowledge. On question 2. All right, so where do you think, as a state, where does our trash go? Take your best guess on this one. All right, we'll give it another 5 seconds here, and then we'll share the results. Okay, let's see what we got. Drum roll, please. 74% chose answer 2, and you 74% are all correct. So good job. Yes, 60% is going to incinerators, 20% to mass landfills, and 20% out of state. And then one wise guy chose answer 4, but there's always one in the crowd, right? All right. All right. So let's move on and talk about this in more detail. So here is where the 60% is going to these waste to energy plants. This one is in Millbury. And that's much more higher percentage than many other states. Some states don't have any waste to energy. And when these plants were first launched in the early 80s, it seemed like, wow, here's the solution to our problem, right? We'll burn our trash, we generate electricity, no more problems. But unfortunately, with all these issues, there's some trade-offs. And in this case, the trade-offs are you've got the emissions coming out of that smokestack that, while they are highly regulated and highly filtered, it's impossible really to make it perfectly clean. And when they do tests of the soil and the water around these plants, they do find higher levels of mercury and other carcinogens. And then the other issue you have to remember is that after you burn all that trash, it's not like it just disappears. You've got toxic ash, which needs to go to an ash landfill, and that's not a great thing either. So for these reasons and others, the state of Massachusetts has a moratorium on the construction of new plants. And even if we lifted that, the likelihood of a new plant being built might be fairly low, because most people will say, well, not in my backyard, so to speak. If they wanted to build this in Tewksbury, I'm guessing people there wouldn't be too thrilled about it. So the other way we deal with our trash primarily here in the state is to put it in a landfill, which, if you think about it, is not the most sophisticated way of dealing with trash. It's kind of like the cavemen. You dig a hole and you throw your trash in it and you bury it. But what starts out as a hole eventually turns into a mountain of trash. And as a result, these landfills need to be capped or closed. Back in the 1980s, we had more than 300 landfills in Massachusetts. Many of them were small, like municipal dumps, so to speak. And now we have 6 left in the entire state. And again, there are trade-offs, right? So if you live near a landfill, there might be odors, you've got truck traffic. And then 2 of the biggest problems are the fact that all that rotting trash is emitting methane, which is a global greenhouse gas, worse than carbon dioxide. And so these huge landfills are just adding to the climate change challenge. And then on the other direction, you've got leachate. So when it rains and snows, there's toxic chemicals mixed in with all that trash that can leach into the ground and into the groundwater. And there have been many cases where local drinking water supplies have been contaminated. So here again, if they came to Tewksbury and said, we're going to build a landfill down the street from you, I'm guessing you wouldn't support that. And then the other 20% I mentioned is going out of state. So we're shipping it to New Hampshire, Ohio, South Carolina. So you think about that you throw something in your trash bin in Tewksbury and it ends up in South Carolina. And that's a very expensive way to deal with trash. But as this map here shows you, this is where the plants currently are, the landfills and the waste to energy plants and the ash landfills, where they are located in Massachusetts. Now, by 2030, all of the MSW, municipal solid waste landfills, are slated to be closed. So that's another 20% that, if we don't make some changes, we'll be shipping out of state at great expense. You'll also notice that many of these plants, especially the waste to energy plants, are located in or adjacent to what's known as environmental justice communities. So they don't typically put these types of things, in the more well-to-do communities. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about, what are we actually throwing away? So MassDEP did a study of the what's going to the incinerators, and this breaks it down. It's a little bit hard to read, but the big takeaway here is that 26% is food waste, and that's a huge, that's a quarter of what we're throwing away. And we pay for trash removal by the ton. That's how these companies charge. And food being very heavy, is also adding to the expense. So the state is working on a new master plan for 2030. And right now, if you're a business that generates a ton or more of food waste a week, you must compost. And I think that's going to be dropped to half a ton. And the state is also trying to encourage residents to take up composting at home. They've got a lot of resources on their website about how to do that. And I know the town of Tewksbury has compost bins available for $25 I saw on the town website. So this is one thing that all of us can do to try to reduce what we're putting in the trash. Not to mention, if we're wasting food, we're wasting money. So we should try to be smarter about that as well. All right, so I've talked about, briefly about the, landfilling, waste to energy, and composting. And now I'm going to talk about, the 3 R's that I imagine most people here are familiar with of, reduce, reuse, and recycle. We'll start with recycle, which, to some people means, well, I put my plastic bottle in a blue bin and I'm done. But really, the strict definition is to convert waste into reusable material. So you got to keep in mind that recycling doesn't work if there isn't an end market for that material. Like no one's just doing this out of the goodness of their hearts, right? It's a multi-billion-dollar business across the globe. And in a perfect world, it should work like this. So you, the consumer, have a plastic water bottle and you put it in a recycling bin where it is then collected and taken to what's called the material recycling facility, otherwise known as a MRF. And there it is, the different types of materials are separated and then combined. So in the case of a plastic water bottle, it would be combined into a large bale of plastic, a PET plastic. And from there, assuming there's a buyer for it, they take delivery. It is then shredded, washed, melted down, and reprocessed back into either new plastic bottles, or one of the most common uses for PET plastic is actually fabric for fleece jackets, which I was surprised to learn that. But and then you, the consumer, can buy that product. So that's kind of like the ideal circular economy, so to speak. But we don't, unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world, right? We all know that. And we have what's called missed recycling opportunities, or in my household, we call it an MRO. We actually have an acronym, if I find one in the trash. And it's really also in some places more like recycling resistance, where many people either just never got the lesson that they should recycle, or heard it but disregard it or don't think it's really important. Or maybe they've seen media reports saying, oh, it's all going in the trash anyway, so why bother? Which is, we'll talk about that. And if you want proof, if you go to a public venue where there are trash and recycling bins, you side by side, often with very clear signage, you go and you look in the trash barrel, and right on top there's plastic water bottles, kind of the low-hanging fruit of recycling, like clearly recyclable. And then you look in the recycling bin and there's food waste and banana peels and things like that. So that is the challenge, is getting people to recycle in the first place. And then the second part is getting them to recycle correctly. And one of the challenges, we have is contamination. So, that occurs when non-recyclables are mixed with recyclables. So if that banana peel is mixed in with the PET plastic, if there's two, it could make that bale not saleable or not usable. You also have contamination among different types of recyclable items. So if broken glass gets mixed in with paper, then it's no good. The reason we have such a problem with contamination is because we are reliant on this single stream process. So if you're old enough to remember when recycling first was introduced here in the US, most of us had a separate bin, one for paper, one for plastic, glass, and so forth. So it was up to us, the consumer, to do the sorting, right? Then the recycling companies, in an effort to increase the volume of recyclables, because at that time they were making a lot of money off these materials, they said, we will give you single stream recycling. So we'll give you one bin, and I believe that's the system you have there in Tewksbury, where you can dump all your recyclables into one bin. You don't have to worry about sorting it. We'll do that for you on the back end when it gets to the material recycling facility. So that's the way it's set up. But as a result, we have a lot of people doing what's known as wish cycling. So if they have a piece of trash that they think is recyclable, they're not quite sure, or maybe they really do think it is recyclable, but they're just wrong, and they're putting it in their recycling bin. We have contamination rates, most communities well above 10%. Some places it's 25, 30%. And up until a couple of years ago, or about 3 years ago, China cracked. We used to ship a lot of this to China. And then China said, we'll only accept your recycling if it's 99.5% clean. So contamination rate higher than 0.5%. So that basically shut down the practice of shipping our recycling to China. So now we're dealing with this large contamination issue. And to address that, the MassDEP, which I should mention underwrites this presentation, put together this Recycle Smart program, which I know, and I know there's a link on your town website to this resource as well. And the idea was they got together with all the recycling companies in the state and said, we need to come up with common answers to these questions. Because, whether you're in Tewksbury or Cape Cod or wherever, when someone goes on, when they ask a question, they want the correct answer. So this website is a very helpful tool. And, we kind of, our mantra really is, when in doubt, find out or throw it out. So you go to this website and get your answers if you're unsure. And worst case, if you can't find an answer, you can suggest it, they will add it to the database. Or worst case than that, you're better off putting something that's recyclable in the trash than vice versa. So keep that in mind. All right, so then as part of the Recycle Smart program, they identified the top contamination items. And I'm going to share the next question with you and just see what you think about this. So statewide, when you think about single stream recycling in Massachusetts, what is the single most problematic item out there? All right, give it another 5 seconds or so. Going once, going twice. All right, we got a good participation rate that time. Let's see here. So we got 56% say plastic bags and wrap. Tie for second place between food waste and electronics. And you 20 people who said plastic wraps, bags and wrap are correct. So good job. But I should mention, these are all problems to varying degrees. So all these things should stay out of your recycling bin. So let's delve a little closer into this, this slide here. That top row is basically all the things you should recycle. So when it comes to food and beverage cans, you just have to empty them, rinse them, good to go. Easy peasy, right? Plastic, they've gotten away from this reliance on the numbers. Oh, is this a 7 or a 3? And it gets very complicated. Your average citizen really doesn't have the knowledge to make that judgment. So basically now they just want you to focus on the shape. If it's a plastic bottle, jar, jug, or tub, you can recycle it. You can put it in your recycling bin, put it that way. And you should also always attach the cap. If you want that to get recycled, attach it. If it's detached, it won't get recycled because it's too small for the machines that sort all this material. And keep that in mind, even small pill bottles, prescription pills, too small. Empty nip bottles, if you're among the people driving around and drinking nips. Don't put those in your recycling bin. Then when it comes to glass, you can still recycle glass, including the lids. They've got magnets that will pull out, separate the metal from the glass. And then paper and cardboard, virtually everything, in that category, with the exception of like bags that have a bubble wrap liner and shredded paper, which I learned the hard way after doing that for several years. That does not go in your single stream. You can return it to like shredding centers, but it contaminates because it's so small, it sticks to everything else and it causes problems in the plants. So don't recycle that. All right, so going down to this bottom row, you guys all correctly guessed the problem with plastic bags. So if there's one lesson we want people to get when it comes to this presentation is don't bag your recyclables, or don't put anything stretchy, not just a shopping bag, but a Ziploc bag or what's called overwrap. So if you buy a case of bottled water, which I don't advise you do, but if you have to, that's overwrapped that keeps it all together, that can go, that should not go in your recycling bin either. However, that stuff can be recycled at the supermarket. So most supermarkets have a bin right outside, and you can collect all your plastic bags, not just your shopping bags, but we keep a bin under our sink. So, you finish a loaf of bread, there's a bag, some English muffins, another bag, Ziploc bags. You'll be amazed when you start collecting it, how much you actually generate. So that can all go back to the supermarket. That material is used for things like Trex decking. That's what they make it out of. And don't ever just put all your recyclables in a trash bag and put that in your bin, because that's going to go straight into the trash. And then the other problem this is the real problem with the bags at the plant, is that it gets stuck in the machinery. It gums up the works. They've got to shut everything down and then try to untangle that mess, which, as you can imagine, is no easy job. It's also very dangerous, and it's costly, because you're shutting the plant down, and time is money, right? So other major one other problem before I move on to other contaminators is this very long-lived debate of paper versus plastic, which is better or worse for the environment. There are pros and cons on both sides. So the real answer is neither. Just reusable bags. And the tricky part, I think we all know, is to remember to actually bring it into the store with you. That's probably the hardest part. When COVID hit, a year ago, there was a ban on the use of reusable bags based on what turned out to be the mistaken assumption, that's how the virus was spreading on surfaces primarily, and that this was dangerous. But that's since ended. So now you can bring your reusable bags. That said, you should still always wash them periodically, whether there's a global pandemic happening or not. You want to keep, if you're putting your food in there, you want to keep it clean. And other major problems in the recycling stream are what's known as tanglers. So you don't ever want to put rubber hoses or holiday lights or anything like that. Just like the bags, that's going to tangle up the machinery. So keep that out, either throw it away, or if it's usable, donate it to some other person or organization. You want to keep it clean, so empty out the liquids, rinse out jars and so forth. You don't have to go crazy and run things through the dishwasher, but give it a good rinse and it's good to go. Then there's this issue of textiles. So roughly about 6% of what's going to the landfills and incinerators in Massachusetts is textiles. So we're trying to preserve room in our landfills and in our system, and there's no reason to put that ever in the trash, and it doesn't belong in your recycling either. So you can always donate, regardless of the condition. If it's not wearable, it's an old shirt with stains or tears, it will be used for insulation or rags, but you don't want to put that in the trash or recycling. And usually most towns have donation bins, either at a drop-off center or at convenience stores, or not sure. I saw it on your website, Simple Recycling. If you have the curbside pickup, but I live in Mansfield. We have it every week. They give you a special bag, and you can put your clothes out on the curb. It's very convenient. So anyway, keep the textiles out of your either bin. And again, I mentioned the website. So this is where you can go to get these answers. There is a link to this from your town's website as well. You can see in this case, what was put in was styrofoam egg cartons. And the answer is no, put this in your trash bin. So just a note that styrofoam or polystyrene is generally not recyclable here in Massachusetts. I mean, it is possible to recycle it, but there really isn't a viable market for it. So even though like many coffee cups from big chains they used to have, until very recently, styrofoam cups, and on the bottom was a recycling emblem, which would lead you to believe you could recycle it, but that's just inaccurate. So that's where you can go to get that information. And then if you have other larger items, Beyond the Bin is another website. I think there's a link on your town website to this as well. So here you can put in, you've got larger items you want to get rid of, or donate. And so like they say, one person's trash is another person's treasure. So In general, larger items, sporting goods, electronics, try to give it away before you throw it away. And not just through, you can go to this site, but you can go on Facebook. Most towns have what's called a buy nothing group, where you just say, hey, I've got this item, who wants it? And 99% of the time, somebody will take it. So that's a great way to reduce what's going to our landfills. All right, so here is just some links. I encourage you to follow RecycleSmartMA on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They publish a lot of great educational content all the time. So, you'll see their posts and you'll gradually become even smarter about recycling. And then here, I just want to talk briefly, we're all familiar with reduce, reuse, recycle, but this model is kind of being expanded a little bit. And you can see from this image, that recycling is really a small piece of the puzzle. If we repurpose, reuse, reduce, and refuse when it comes to single-use plastic, that can move the needle probably even more dramatically as far as reducing waste. So, when it comes to reuse, there's something called upcycling, where you take an item that might have been trash and you repurpose it in some creative way, as you can see here. So that's one thing we can all try to do. And then when it comes to this refusing, it's kind of a bonus R I throw in here, is just to let local businesses know that you value more environmentally friendly products and choices. And it could be as simple as you go to a restaurant and you order a drink, you can just tell your server, I don't need a straw, I can drink it without it. Or a lot of people have been ordering takeout food over the past year or so, and a lot of restaurants just automatically will put in the plastic utensils and all the condiments and napkins. And more than likely, you're going to be eating this at home, where I imagine you have utensils and condiments. So you can just tell them when you place your order, skip the plastic. And you'll also help the restaurants save some money and hopefully increase their profits and stay in business. One other thing when it comes to takeout, it's not widely known, but black plastic is not recyclable in our single stream system, because black on top, or very dark colors on a black conveyor belt, cannot be picked up by the machines that are sorting all this stuff. You can't see the codes. So you'll notice that many takeout containers have that black bottom with a clear top, so you can let your local restaurants know that, hey, did you know that's not recyclable? Could just pick a different color. I don't know why the industry itself doesn't just pick a color that they know can be recycled. Instead, all that black plastic is going in the trash. So that's kind of a simple thing, but for whatever reason, it's not happening. So on the legislative side of things, there are also potential solutions to these things. When it comes to plastic bags, if we had a statewide law that govern the use of plastic bags, there are some, it's called House docket and Senate docket. They're not quite bills yet, but there was a bill last year that was gaining momentum in the State House to come up with a single law for the whole state, because right now 130 communities, maybe more, have passed ordinances to reduce the use of plastic bags, and the rules vary from one town to the other. So from a business perspective, I could see the case for, like, can we just have one rule, and that makes sense. But unfortunately, the bill that was gaining momentum last year, was kind of watered down. So some people were against it because it was going to make local laws not as strong as this new state law. So we'll see what happens there. Now, maybe there's momentum to get something done in this session. And then another concept that's gaining a lot of popularity is extended producer responsibility, which is really extending it to packaging and paper products. So that's really about getting the companies that sell these products to us to factor in the cost of their disposal into their business model, and to design their packages in such a way that they are easily recyclable, don't use as much plastic, like the takeout containers, right? That would be an easy fix. So that's gaining some momentum as well in the State House. You can see an act to save recycling costs. And then one of the biggest sources of roadside litter we see during our cleanups around the state is the empty miniature liquor bottles known as NIPS. And while the whole bottle bill probably needs to be overhauled and updated, just adding this one item there's a lot of nickels lying around out there, just put it that way. So that wouldn't solve the litter problem when it comes to NIPS, but we believe it would certainly get people to pick them up. And we have a petition on change.org. If you search for the NIPS, last I looked, I think we were around 8,000 signatures. So if you want to sign that, and we share that with state legislators to try to get some movement on this. All right, so I'm in the last phase here, and then we'll open it up to questions. So I just want to talk about one other type of trash, which is litter. And sadly, we see litter on virtually every roadside in Massachusetts. It's a very frustrating problem to try to solve because it's seemingly so simple, like, hey, don't litter, right? Don't throw stuff out your car window. But some people obviously have not gotten that lesson. If you're old enough to remember the public service announcements from the 1970s with the crying Indian, that was I thought, a very effective campaign. We had a lot of messages in the public sphere, like, give a hoot, don't pollute, don't be a litter bug. We all kind of got that basic message of like, hey, clean up after yourself, right? But that kind of faded away. I don't know why. And now we've had a generation that's grown up seemingly not getting that very basic message. And we have a mess here in Massachusetts. You look along our major highways, country back roads, suburban streets, city sidewalks. So I'm going to ask you about one last poll here to see what's the biggest problem that you see as far as litter in Tewksbury. And you could probably check all these, I'm sure, but what's the one that really drives you nuts? All right, give you another 5 seconds here. All right, drum roll. Let's see. Number one answer, the dreaded NIP. Okay. It's interesting to see because I do this in communities around the state, what the issue is in one town or another. Some cases, NIPs are a big problem, sometimes not. But obviously, it is a problem in Tewksbury, along with the plastic beverage bottles. Cigarette butts always rank high, fast food trash. I forgot to put, I meant to add the dog poop bags because that usually ranks fairly high as well. So interesting results here. The dreaded floss and toss, that one I can never understand. Like, why are there that many people flossing their teeth in public? I guess. But strange world. So here, I keep Massachusetts beautiful. Litter really is kind of our number one issue we focus on. And so we try to address that through a program called the Great Massachusetts Cleanup. And I know, so what this is, we encourage communities across the state to organize, really, as we call a town-wide community cleanup every spring and ideally every fall as well. And we know a lot of communities already do this. I know that Tewksbury has something coming up, I believe on May 8th. And I believe there's some members of the Tewksbury Beautification Committee with us tonight. So at the end, feel free to plug your event coming up on May 8th, I believe. But this is trying to be a more coordinated effort across the state. And if we can get every town and city in the state to organize something like this and try to, under the banner of the Great Massachusetts Cleanup, we feel like it'll be more impactful. And we can also work with our state legislators to show, like, look what all these volunteers are doing, but what are we doing at the state level? and to that end, very little. There's been very little leadership from senior people in our government on this issue. So we have actually launched another petition on change.org. Just be search for litter-free Mass. We're basically urging our state leaders to form some type of task force, the litter reduction, litter prevention and cleanup task force, because we spend millions of dollars every year around the state, millions, thousands of volunteer hours cleaning up, this hamster wheel of cleaning up, but we do nothing to try to actually prevent people from littering. So like a Massachusetts themed public service campaign, like I mentioned, from the 1970s, let's have a 2021 version, featuring some Massachusetts celebrity, Marky Mark or someone like that. I don't know. I would have said Tom Brady, but we can't say that anymore. But someone to raise awareness, educate people, show them what it's doing to our state. I mean, we're a very progressive, I would consider intelligent state. But if you're visiting here from another part of the country, you might conclude otherwise if you looked at our roadsides. So as far as your local cleanups, you can also register these on our website, and we have an event calendar that's got dozens of cleanups scheduled for this month. So feel free to do that as well. And then the other thing you can do on an individual level, we launched the Massachusetts Litter Cleanup Crew last summer in reaction to COVID, because most of the spring cleanups last year, were canceled. And we and I, like even in my suburban neighborhood, seeing all these people walking around just trying to get outside and maintain their sanity and get some exercise, and plenty of litter around, but no one picking it up. So kind of light bulbs that went off. So why don't we try to put people to work? So we give them the equipment that they need to clean up safely. We can make a difference. So this program, as you see the website there, you can sign up. You basically take the pledge. You say, I'm going to keep, Elm Street in Tewksbury litter free, and we will ship you a litter cleanup kit that includes a litter grabber tool, a pair of gloves, a reusable bag, and a nifty bright yellow T-shirt that makes you highly visible on the side of the road. And then you go have at it. So we ship those for free. We do ask for a donation, but some people can donate, some can't. Either way, we have shipped, we're up to about 600 of these just since last summer. And it's picking up momentum. We can barely keep up right now. So many people are signing up. So, our goal is if we can get thousands of people across the state doing this and doing it on a regular basis versus like those, the spring cleanups and the fall cleanups are great, but sadly within days, new trash starts piling up. So this is really about getting people taking ownership of their own streets, their own neighborhoods, and cleaning them up. This is my dog, Pogo, who helps me in my neighborhood. He's my evil assistant. So, we go out for a walk, we grab the bag, we grab the, the grabber, and just keep it clean. All right, so just a few last comments about Keep Massachusetts Beautiful if you're not familiar with us. So we are a nonprofit, launched in 2014. This is kind of our vision of, the ideal scenario, scenery in Massachusetts, where you've got clean water, clean air. I don't see any litter. There better not be any litter in this picture. So that's kind of where we believe everyone deserves to live in a clean, green, beautiful community, no matter where you live. Our mission statement's pretty self-explanatory, but the two key words there are taking action. So we really try to get people out there taking ownership of their own streets, their own neighborhood. If you don't like the way, things look where you live, well, no one, the trash isn't going to pick itself up. So get out there and do something about it. We have local chapters. So these towns and cities shaded in green, we're up to 33. We'd love to see Tewksbury join the club. And, we offer a lot of benefits. If you go to keepmassbeautiful.org/join, you'll see kind of the support we offer to our local chapters. And the number one thing really to me is and we did a survey on this, and we asked our chapter leaders, what's most important to you? And they said being part of a statewide organization We have a chapter leaders Facebook group. We're sharing ideas. We don't have, if someone has a question, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can kind of use the collective knowledge of the group. So, we're adding new chapters all the time. I know in some cases there is a group like the Tewksbury Beautification Committee where it's really more of a rebranding exercise. Like you've already got, your infrastructure in place, but by coming under our umbrella, you get some benefits and some kind of branding benefits as well. So if anyone wants to talk to me about that later, feel free. All right, so here's where you can follow us. In particular, our Facebook page. We are prolific publishers of litter and recycling and sustainability issues. We post a lot of great content, so follow that page. Or we also have a group, and then we're on these other channels as well. All right, so summing up, I mentioned early on, we talked at the global level, the Massachusetts level, and now at the personal level. These are all small things we can all do to make a difference here. So, reduce the amount of trash that you create every day. The average American generates around 5 pounds of trash a day, multiplied by 330 million people, it adds up. So simple things like having a reusable water mug in your car, a reusable coffee mug, even I keep kind of a to-go bag in my car with utensils and a metal straw, things like that. So if I do have to buy food on the go, I don't have to use plastic to eat it. Reuse whatever you can or donate it to someone else who can use it. So, those, your website, I believe, lists places locally where you can donate things. So take advantage of that. There's Habitat for Humanity, places like that. Recycle as much, which we talked about in depth, but do it correctly. Very important part there. Refuse single-use plastic. Let those local businesses know that you value a clean environment and you want better options when you visit. Teach your family and friends how to recycle. So whether you're older and you're teaching your grandkids or your kids, or you're younger and you're teaching your parents and your grandparents, either way works. And then, take action. Like I said earlier, participate in your local cleanup on May 8th, I believe, or just simply pick up litter when you see it, or join the Mass Litter Cleanup Crew, or launch a local Keep Mass Beautiful chapter. All right, so tomorrow I'll send out a recording of this presentation, including a link to this survey. If anybody, we do value your input, so we encourage you. It takes about 2 minutes to complete the survey, but we're always trying to kind of evolve this and make sure it remains interesting and relevant. So we appreciate your feedback. All right, so thank you for hanging in there for 48 minutes and 20 seconds. At this point, we will try to address some of your questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Neil, do you want me to read the questions to you, or do you want
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, that'd be great if you could. If you want to select the ones you think are most relevant. And then at the end, if we have time, we'll, people can unmute and just ask questions verbally.
Sure. Donna wants to know, what about black plastic? Can that be recycled?
No. So I covered that with the takeout containers.
Got it.
So no, unfortunately.
Lori says, what about a deposit for water bottles? Folks just toss them since they can't get a nickel for them.
Yeah, and I alluded to that, as far as the bottle bill, there is a bill to really overhaul it. And if you recall, there was a referendum statewide about 5 years ago that was going to do that, was going to add a lot of products that didn't exist in 1983 when the bottle bill passed. Like, hardly anyone was drinking bottled water back then, right? Somehow we all survived. I don't know. But so there is an effort to really, and also increase the deposit from a nickel to a dime, because a nickel is virtually worthless today. Versus 1983, a nickel was worth more. So.
Mike wants to know, do some towns in Massachusetts accept aluminum foil and aluminum tins for recycling?
I believe they all do, as long as it's clean. And again, when in doubt, find out. go to recyclesmartma.org and the answer should be there.
Arlene notes that with the pandemic, a new pet peeve of hers is finding gloves and masks as litter. And Kathleen and Lori agree. So maybe you can update your survey as long as COVID is going on.
Yeah, PPE litter, I mean, didn't exist until a year ago, and now it's one of the top things we find. Not so much the gloves anymore, because we got away from worrying about contact spread, and now, but the masks are everywhere. And just so you know, those don't ever go in your recycling bin either, which you think is common sense. But
Elena mentions that Lady Bird Johnson's Keep America Beautiful campaign seemed to be successful. Let's see.
Yeah, we are, just so you know, we are a state level affiliate of Keep America Beautiful. So yes, and again, those messages were very out there. Back when we only had 3 or 4 TV channels, it was easier to get a message out to everybody. Now everything is so fragmented, it's more challenging.
Laura says, has a question about plastic air-filled packing material. I see recycle logos on those, and I know someone who lives in Washington State that recycles them, but can they be recycled here?
They can. So, a lot of that comes, your Amazon packages might come with that material. You pop it, and that can go in with your shopping bags. Like I said earlier, any kind of stretchable plastic material can all go back to the supermarket. It doesn't just have to be shopping bags. You can include that.
Matthew says, can Amazon mail envelopes with bubble wrap included with the envelope be recycled anywhere? I don't believe they can be placed in the stream, in the one stream.
Single stream, yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I read recently that Amazon does have a new envelope, plastic envelope, the plastic one, that could go to the supermarket as well. If it's the paper with the bubble wrap inside, that goes in the trash, unfortunately.
Toby says, my 10-year-old Keurig coffee maker is no longer working. I use reusable pods. How can I best dispose of a Keurig?
That's a tough one. I know Simple Recycling, which I mentioned. I don't know if do you have that service in Tewksbury?
I saw something. I myself was looking on the recycling and trash webpage today. I saw something like that, but honestly, I'm not familiar with that service. But
I saw that there was listed. Yeah, I saw there was a number to call, but if you have it, I know here in Mansfield they do take small appliances, so you could put. I just put a broken coffee maker in the plastic bag last week, and they took it.
So Paige, just to interrupt, sorry. So Neil, Paige in the chat, Paige is sort of spearheads the beautification committee. She says it's also referred to as the pink bag program here in Tewksbury. So we do have it. And the pink bag goes out on your recycling day, your regular recycling.
You take small household appliances.
Kathleen wants to know, what about Chinese food containers? Do you need to take the metal handles off?
That's one category I didn't cover, and I don't know specifically. I would say if you were going to try to recycle it, yes, because material, it should always, any type of recyclable should just be one material. So paper and metal don't mix. So you could take off that, but generally speaking, coated cartons. So milk cartons, chicken broth that comes in that waxy coated carton is not recyclable here in Massachusetts. And I think Chinese food containers would fall into that category. Plus, unless you rinse it really well, you don't want to have food waste. So for that one, I don't know 100%. I'll say go to the RecycleSmartMA, and I'm very confident the answer is there. I don't eat a lot of Chinese food. So.
Vinny asks, we were told that clean pizza boxes are recyclable. True or false?
True. Now, for a long time, they were saying no, and that was one of the things that came out of the new program was they got everyone to say, all right, Now, that said, if you had a pizza that was just, I don't know, the greasiest pizza you ever had in your life, and the bottom half of that box is just saturated with grease, I would say you could rip it in half and recycle the top half. And regardless, a little bit of grease is fine, but you want to remove any food that's pizza crust, cheese, or those wax lining, the liners that they put in, you want to take that out as well. So you want to just the cardboard.
Amir says that Best Buy will recycle Keurig and other coffee machines. Laura wants to know, can clean Ziploc bags go back to the supermarket?
Yes.
Okay. You already answered Cynthia's question about the greasy pizza boxes. And Elena just has a general comment as we come up on 8 o'clock. Recyclable items that Tewksbury accepts seems to be decreasing in the last 2 to 3 years. Is that something you're seeing across the state, Neil?
Well, the big picture, like I mentioned earlier with China, where we were just shipping everything over there, we really didn't worry about it, right? Out of sight, out of mind. There's some good things coming out of that, actually, because we're now starting to build some infrastructure here in the US to process these materials right here. And ironically, Chinese companies are buying up old paper mills in Maine and other places and using them for recycling paper and then shipping that back to China. Glass has become a big issue. There was one plant in Massachusetts that was recycling glass that closed 2 years ago. So glass is now being shipped farther away. It's heavy and expensive to ship, and some places are saying we're not going to recycle glass anymore. But another creative use of glass is now being mixed in with asphalt for like paving projects. So, but otherwise, I haven't seen a big decrease in the amount of items that are recyclable. One of the challenges is, these companies that, I mentioned EPR, extended producer responsibility. They keep introducing new types of packaging that didn't exist. And it's hard to keep up sometimes with, is this recyclable or not? And a lot of times they just slap that recycling emblem on there and it's not true. So that's a challenge too.
Can I ask a follow-up to my question on aluminum foil?
Yeah.
Our information that we receive from the company that picks up and takes care of our recyclables sends us information every year, and I seem to recall that it says we cannot recycle aluminum foil or aluminum packaging containers.
Okay, well, it's possible that's correct. I know you've got a Republic, I believe, in Tewksbury. So that one,
Yes, right.
I would ask your town officials specifically if there's some reason why Tewksbury is different than everywhere else. But pretty sure if you go on the Mass Recycle site, a Mass Recycle Smart site, that it would say it is, as long, again, if it's clean. So that one I would defer to your local officials.
Okay.
And I'll include Christine and Janine's email addresses in tomorrow's email. I'll also include, I didn't realize Neil had a survey, so I'm going to include Neil's survey in the email that I send out tomorrow. Also, information about the town-wide cleanup day on May 8th. And also this Saturday from 10 to noon in the library parking lot, if there's anyone looking to donate books, we are taking book donations from 10 to 12 in the library parking lot. So we'd be happy to take any unwanted books off your hands. So I think, so Elena, the answer to the Ziploc bag answer was yes, you can return those if they're clean. So Neil, I think we've kind of run through and hit everything in the chat. Did you have any last words you wanted to give to the group before we wrap up?
No, I'll just open it up. If anyone has a verbal question they want to ask, I can talk trash all night long, so don't worry about me. So I'll give that one last opportunity if anybody has a comment or a question they want to say, and then from there we can wrap things up.
I will note Kathleen just asked about light bulbs in the chat. Did you see that?
No, what was the question?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was sent to me directly. Oh, sorry,
Oh.
Kathleen, I outed you. Kathleen wants to know, all she says is, what about light bulbs? Can light bulbs be recycled? And you touched on that in your presentation, I think.
Well, regular light bulbs go in the trash, and then if you have the CFL bulbs, those terrible ones we had not too long ago that take like 10 minutes to warm up, those have, those have mercury in them. And if you've ever read the package, it's like, oh, if this breaks in your house, like, well, evacuate, and you think, why do we have this in our house? Whose idea was this? So those need to go back to either the hardware store, local hardware store, or Home Depot. They will take them back. Same with long fluorescent bulbs. Here, someone says Aubuchon Hardware recycles the light bulbs. You don't want to throw those in the trash, again, because they have mercury, which we don't want mercury in the landfills or in the incinerators. So I hope I answered that.
Yeah, I think so. Anyone want to ask a question via video or audio to Neil before we wrap?
Okay.
All right, I think we're good, Neil.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for having me. Again, visit our website, keepmassbeautiful.org. Follow us on social media. And then sign that petition. We got to get our state leaders to start paying attention to some of these issues. So thank you so much,
Hi,
everybody.
Paige. Goodbye, Paige. Hi, Bob. Goodbye, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Great
Good
to
night.
see you. Thanks for joining. Neil, thank you so
Oh,
much.
Paige, finally, nice to see your face. I've seen your name so many times.
Thank you so much, really.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Robert.
everybody.
Thank you, Paige, as always. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks, Robert.